Okay, we talked a while ago about the underground tunnels. I think it was at JPL facility, and
yes.
And so I wondered if there were any other tunnels or similar facilities that you ended up working in or got to know about in your career.
Yes, in the early 70s, I was temporary duty to Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. Then I worked at Buckley Field, which I believe is called Buckley Air Base now, or Air Force Base. And we were putting in these massive geodesic domes with these huge radar tracking centers. At the time, we only had 2 that was under construction. Now I think there's 6 or 8 of them. Over the years, they put in more. And they have multiple level underground facilities with elevators and tunnels. And I'm thinking it's one of the biggest facilities I've ever seen underground. Now,
is this the one that's 10 stories high, 10 stories down?
No, that was the Defense Advanced Research Center out at Area 51. However, at Buckley was the first place I was underground to where they had massive facilities, also with tunnels. And these radar systems was publicly to track space debris in our satellites. But in fact, it's come out over the years that they track everything, including what's commonly referred to as unidentified flying objects. So they are set up by the Air Force, and also NORAD gets the information. North American Air Defense. And it was amazing to me that just how massive the facilities were, and the tunnels going between the different domes, and tunnels going off in different directions. And of course, I can't prove it, but there's rumors that Buckley Field, some of their biggest tunnels, over 40 feet across, maybe 60 feet, go to the Denver airport, which books have been written about all our underground facilities at Denver airport. So that was quite interesting.
Yes. And what year were you there and going in those facilities?
I believe it was around 71.
Right.
71, 72 time frame.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, we've got some of those geodesic domes. We have them at a place in the UK, well, there's probably several places, but one of the biggest, I think, is Menwith Hill, which is not far from where I grew up. You must have heard of that facility, because it is a US facility, if my memory serves me correctly. So, I've seen those myself, not of course, the underground things, but the above ground things. So obviously you'd worked in the facilities in Groom Lake, but another of the things that I think caused some confusion among people was S4, and you've got some information about that facility, which you originally were, had one conclusion about it, but I think you later came to understand something different. So if you tell us what you know about S4 and what you came to know about it.
Well, I didn't mention S4 in the book, but when I first went to Laughlin, I didn't know anything about UFOs. I hadn't read any UFO books. I mean, I just wasn't interested in it. I'd read science fiction, but not UFOs in anything in particular. So when I'm out there meeting all these people, and some of them have good credibility, like ex-pilots or scientists or whatever, and then there were others that were just absolutely tinfoil hat wearers that were crazy. are claimed to be abductees. And so, I mean, you had a whole mix. But the consensus was that some guy named Bob Lazar had talked about S4 at Papoose Dry Lake, which is south of Groom Air Base, having all these hidden facilities. And that when I mentioned I'd been at a facility, underground facility called the Defense Advanced Research Center, that had to have been at Papoose, S4. So against my better judgment, when I gave my presentation, I mentioned S4, thinking that the DARC facility had to have been at S4 because I didn't know exactly where it was because we went there at night and it was out in the desert. Well, I shortly realized after that S4 has always been a radar test site north of Groom Air Base at Tonopah.
Right.
The Air Force Base at Tonopah. Bob Lazar describes parking lots, improved rails, sidewalks, parking lot lighting, massive doors in the side of the hills, or actually he said mountains. Well, first of all, there's a number of satellite pictures of S4, and geologists have been out there, ranchers have been out there, people that test flew drone aircraft have been out there. There's absolutely no evidence there's ever been any kind of facility at Papoose Dry Lake. Now, Papoose Dry Lake is not S4. S4 is a radar site in Tonopah. So Bob Lazar fabricated saying S4 was at Papoose Dry Lake because he had a relative that worked at Tonopah and talked about S4. So Bob, when he's concocting the story with John Lear, they make S4 be in this secret area where they had UFOs at Papoose Dry Lake.
Right.
So I made a mistake there by coming to the conclusion that all these people had to be right. Well, they were wrong, and as soon as I found out about it, every time I spoke about it afterwards, I said, no, there are no facilities of any kind at Papoose Dry Lake. There's no parking lots, there's no lighting, there's no sidewalks, there's no rails, there's no facilities built on the side of the mountains. So I felt kind of duped, but it was my own poor judgment is the reason I ever concluded that in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. That's understandable. If you only know, if you're making an assumption that somebody else is telling the truth, and it seems to sort of fit into part of your knowledge, then you can easily get sucked into the lie, as it were. And so you mentioned there the DARC facility, and if you could describe, I think the DARC stands for Defense Advanced Research
Center.
And so that's what it is. And where when were you working there? And if you could tell us a bit more about it.
A few times during the period that I was TDY to Groom Air Base, I was taken to a facility. And basically the bus pulled into what appeared to be the side of a hill. It was hard to tell because we're in a hangar, and when you looked out of the hangar, you could see the hills and some mountains in the distance. And you only got a glimpse of that because, the whole, and this was not unusual because at Groom Air Base, they have these platform elevators like you have on aircraft carriers that are massive. And like on an aircraft carrier, you can take a big aircraft and take it several stories down into the aircraft carrier to work on it or arm it or repair it or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, this hangar I was in, which I later found out was called Defense Advanced Research Center, which is kind of a cool acronym, DARC. it's like DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. So it was DARC. And went down several stories, and we worked on some equipment, and then I talked to a couple of guys about the problems I was having at Groom Air Base, and it was nothing super surprising. In other words, it's not like I didn't discover some new phenomena or advanced technology, but the fact that they had this massive, I don't know how many stories it went underground, but I believe the elevator had 10 stories, 1 through 10 sublevels. And, however, I have been in buildings that you have to get off one elevator to go higher, or get on one elevator to go lower, get on another one. So at least there were 10 levels below ground. And from what I could see from the hallway, it was a damn big facility. Now, there's people that have helped me spend hours and hours and hours that they have on Google. And there's a couple of locations that are south and southeast of Groom Air Base, because I felt like when the bus turned around that we were headed south or southeast. Now, when you're on a darkened out bus, for all I know, I could have been going north. We could have gone to Tonopah. The DARC facility could have been up at Tonopah at the facilities up there, or it could have been east out in the mountains somewhere. So I really don't know to this day where the facility was, but it was another highly classified facility in Area 51.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to think what might actually be there. Because I'm guessing there'll be other facilities as well, which of course you would have had no reason to be shown, or because you weren't working in, and it's all compartmentalized. So,
well, I guess I'm trying to think now that you mentioned it, what other places I was underground. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has a lot of facilities that's underground. But the only time I was underground at Wright-Patterson is related to some electronic countermeasure stuff, and we went 3 stories underground. But other than Edwards, Area 51, Buckley Field, and Wright-Pat, off the top of my head, I can't remember being in any sub-levels anywhere else.
Ed, we talked earlier about your career, and you explained to me that you were the liaison to industry, and I wondered basically how that came about, that you started that role, and what did it entail?
Well, after I left Nellis Air Force Base, which you talked about previously, I ended up in Okinawa at Kadena Air Base, and during my 3-year tenure there, we fielded the F-15, F-16 fighter aircraft in Japan, Okinawa, and South Korea. So when I was ready to leave there, I was supposed to go to headquarters, Pacific Air Forces, PACAF, in Hawaii at Hickam Air Base, but there was a fight between Strategic Air Command, Tactical Air Command, and PACAF that all wanted me. So I got diverted to SAC for 1 year up at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and while I was up there, we were establishing a top secret satellite communications command post on the base, and also Strategic Air Command. So while I was with Strategic Air Command at Plattsburgh, we were establishing a top secret satellite communications command post, both at Plattsburgh and also on the Canadian border. We had basically a secret field, so the B-52s, if we were attacked, the B-52s carrying nukes could deploy to isolated bases or runways. So then they came out with the F-111 replacement program, where they were replacing avionics and test equipment, and doesn't sound like a big job, but the test equipment program alone was ended up costing the Air Force $500 million. So I ended up getting selected as the originally the Strategic Air Command liaison to the depots, and which entailed going to different bases and different defense contractors, and also briefing the staff at Strategic Air Command and air staff at the Pentagon, and but during the first year, many times, Tactical Air Command or Pacific Air Forces or US Air Forces in Europe, safety, these other commands didn't have the expertise I had, so they just signed off on me representing them too. So after the first year, I was representing multiple commands, and it turned into I was pretty much the Air Force liaison to industry when it came to issues of avionics, test equipment, electronic countermeasures, some crypto systems, and some satellite communication systems. So it gave me access to all the latest programs, including black programs that were under development by the Air Force and the defense contractors, and a lot of the testing sites that were doing research and development in flight operation test and evaluation. So it was quite an experience there from 81 to 87 until I retired, having access to that many different systems under development and having kind of an inside look at everything. So it gave me a real understanding of the big picture of a lot of these classified programs, and some of them were funded by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and others by other Air Force agencies, and in some cases the CIA and the NSA were also involved in these programs, wanting to be part of these programs. So that's basically what I did the last 7 years that I was in the Air Force before I retired in 87.
And so that was the liaison position, was it, that you were, liaising with all these different companies, or?
Yes, and during this period, my boss was a two-star general, a major general, Doran, and I basically, he's the only one I reported to, and it was a wonderful working relationship because he basically gave me carte blanche, or a blank check. I'd go to defense contractors. Westinghouse was a prime example, and they had this vice president, I think his name was General Urban or something like that, and he threatened me and called General Doran and says, well, this guy's going to threaten, Ed Fouche threatened to shut our program down because we're over budget, behind schedule. General Doran told me, he says, well, if Ed Fouche wants to shut down your $300 million program, then we're going to do it. And he said, don't bother me anymore. Talk to Ed.
Wow.
Yeah,
so I mean, you sort of got into quite a position of influence by then for those areas.
Yeah, as a math sergeant, a senior math sergeant, I was filling a colonel slot, and I mean, I had all these majors and lieutenant colonels and colonels and everything else coming up to me asking me for advice or wanting me to copy them on my reports, and I was well known throughout the Air Force, especially in research and development and FOTNE. So I had quite a reputation that, it was all about business. It was all about taking care of the people in the field that had to use this equipment or fly the planes or repair it. I wasn't much for politics, and people wanted to do things for political reasons. I just wanted to protect our people in the Air Force that had to fly the aircraft and had to work on it.
Right. Ed, we mentioned the NSA quite a few times in our discussion, and I think perhaps some people underestimate the size. So how big would you say that the NSA is?
Even going back to when I was in the military, and it was even the name of the NSA, National Security Agency, was classified. You couldn't say it.
Yeah, no such
the government and military made liars out of a bunch of us because we couldn't tell the truth to our spouses or girlfriends or family. But even back in the 80s, and still, the NSA has more facilities, more land, more equipment, more personnel, and more influence on the next 12 intelligence agencies in the United States. In other words, more budget than the CIA, the FBI, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office. The 12 out of 13 agencies are surpassed by the budget and personnel and capability of the NSA.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of people forget that, don't they, that how big it is. I mean, we're obviously hearing a lot more about the NSA now with, Bradley Manning and Ed Snowden and stuff like that, but, it still makes you wonder.
And now you know why I destroyed so many of my original documents, because I would have been back in the 90s when I came out and started disclosing, I would have been the Bradley Manning or Assange or Ed Snowden or one of those guys that would have been prosecuting and putting in Leavenworth.
Absolutely.
So I haven't put out classified documents.